This video was made for one reason: to save the life of someone precious to you. Tonight, to all of you who are listening to my voice right now. Are you by any chance losing sleep because of the sound of someone snoring? Would you believe me if I told you that very noise is actually the strongest sign that they are still alive? The real terror you see isn't the noise, but the sudden heavy silence. If you watch this video until the very end, you will become a detective, capable of saving your husband, or perhaps a neighbor who has collapsed on the street. As a veteran detective with 25 years on the force, the most frightening scenes I've encountered aren't the ones covered in blood. It is the quiet bedrooms and the cold chairs in the precinct where someone was thought to be just sleeping, but had already passed away without a trace. Thinking to yourself, he's finally quiet, he must be in a deep sleep. And then tucking him in, that very kindness, can sometimes be a fatal mistake. Today, through 3 real-life cases, I will investigate the final clues that the Grim Reaper leaves behind before it's too late. It's 5:30 in the morning. The air in the duty room is thick and smells of stale coffee. For a detective, a ringing phone at dawn is never a welcome guest.
Is this 911? I'm at the local apartment complex. My husband was snoring. And then he just stopped breathing, his lips and body, they're turning blue. Please, help us, please.
At that same moment, the police dispatch and the detective's office are flooded with radio calls.
Fatal incident occurred while monitoring an intoxicated person at the precinct, requesting immediate support from the forensics team.
Then another radio call cuts through.
A man in his 40s found deceased in a parked car at the apartment parking lot. Evidence of vomiting found. Which unit is closest to the scene?
Tonight, an invisible killer has struck 3 different locations all at once. The first scene, a bedroom. No signs of forced entry and no weapons to be found. But the lips of the father, a man in his 50s, are already tinged with a purple hue, and his body is as cold as ice. The second scene, inside a parked car. As soon as the door opens, the pungent smell of alcohol and the sour stench of vomit hits you instantly. The victim is curled up in the back seat, his face covered in his own vomit. The final scene at the precinct, on the CCTV, the man had his head tilted back, snoring like thunder just moments ago. Then at some point, after a short, choked gasp, a heavy silence filled the room. Now let's listen to the statement from the grieving family of the victim, found in the parking lot.
My husband, he always snored in his sleep, but that night, it was exceptionally loud. I just thought, well, he had a few drinks, so that's why. It went, snore, gasp, and then, the sound just stopped. Usually, after about 10 seconds, he'd let out a big breath and start breathing again. But 1 minute passed, then 2, and it was still quiet. I felt something was wrong. So I turned on the light, his face was blue, and when I shook him, he was just limp. I called 911 immediately. The dispatcher told me to keep doing chest compressions, so I did. Fortunately, the paramedics arrived quickly, and we were able to avoid a tragedy.
While on patrol, we received a report of an intoxicated person collapsed on the street, and we responded. We brought him to the precinct for his safety. He was grinding his teeth and snoring loudly in the chair, so we figured he was just in a very deep, drunken sleep. We didn't want to disturb him, so we quietly covered him with a blanket. While we were handling other cases, we called for a transport car to transfer him. But the man under the blanket was far too quiet. When we checked on him, he had already stopped breathing. We had no idea that the silence was actually a sign of death.
Now let's look at the medical examiner's report for the deceased individual found in the parked car.
The cause of death is definitely aspiration. High levels of alcohol suppressed his gag reflex, causing the vomit to flow back and completely block his airway. In the case at the precinct, it was obstructive asphyxia, caused by the base of the tongue falling back and blocking the throat. When intoxicated, the muscles around the throat become extremely relaxed, making the airway collapse much easier than usual. In such cases, brain death can occur within just 4 minutes after the snoring stops.
You've heard the medical expert's explanation. Now let me translate that for you from a detective's perspective. Alcohol essentially turns every survival switch in our body to off. The muscles in your throat are no exception. When the base of the tongue falls back and blocks the airway, the body struggles, desperately trying to pull in air. That sound, that desperate struggle, is what we call snoring. But when the tongue completely blocks the path, the sound cuts off. That is when the 4-minute battle for life begins. The same goes for vomiting in a car. If you weren't intoxicated, you would cough it out. But when the brain is paralyzed by alcohol, the vomit goes straight into the lungs, and that is what kills.
I used to nag him all the time, saying how awful the snoring was. I thought I'd be happy if the noise just stopped. But now that I can't hear it, I don't know how to go on. The police told me they thought he was just sleeping soundly. Nobody realized that the snoring was actually his final scream for help. Falling asleep after drinking shouldn't be a death sentence, Detective Paul, please. I wouldn't care how loud it was if I could just hear that snoring one more time.
When we reconstruct these cases, we see that death had already sent several warning notices at the scene. If your family or anyone in your care shows these signs, you must wake them up immediately. Please remember these 3 things. First, watch for intermittent silence. If the snoring isn't rhythmic and stops for more than 10 seconds, they aren't sleeping. They are being strangled from the inside. Second, listen for a gurgling or rattling sound. If the breathing sounds wet or like it's boiling, it's a red flag that vomit or saliva is already entering the airway. Third, look for cold sweats and bluish skin. If their face or lips turn purple, or if they are sweating enough to soak their clothes, their heart is screaming for lack of oxygen. Please keep this in mind. The moment an intoxicated person stops snoring and goes quiet, you must shake their shoulders and wake them up. If they don't respond, it's not a deep sleep, it's a loss of consciousness. To prepare for these situations, Detective Hahn from our forensics team will provide a briefing on prevention. Please listen closely.
Hello, I'm Detective Hahn from the forensics team. As Detective Paul mentioned, here are 3 survival solutions to ensure you don't miss the golden hour. First, use the recovery position. Never lay an intoxicated person flat on their back. Turn them onto their left side, and bend their top arm and leg, to keep them stable. Just by laying them on their side, you can prevent the tongue from blocking the airway, and allow any vomit to flow naturally out of the mouth. Second, check their consciousness every 15 minutes, whether at home or elsewhere. If they go quiet, speak to them, or gently shake their shoulders every 15 minutes. Confirming that they respond to stimuli is the most reliable safety net you have. Third, utilize body pillows and low pillows. If your husband has been drinking, place a long cushion behind his back to encourage him to sleep on his side. Also, ensure the pillow isn't too high. A high pillow can tilt the neck and narrow the airway further. Lastly, sleeping in a car after drinking is extremely dangerous. If you've driven someone home, make sure they are fully awake and aware they've arrived. Open the window slightly, recline the passenger seat, and always make sure they are lying on their side. Vomiting in a cramped, enclosed space can take a life in an instant. Please ask for help from local law enforcement if needed. Ensuring a safe handoff is the only way to save them. This has been Detective Hahn.
As I left the precinct after the investigation, the dawn air, after the rain had stopped, felt quite chilly. The husband, who has since been discharged from the hospital, now uses a CPAP machine, a breathing device, and has formed a new habit of always sleeping on his side. His wife now, the moment she notices the snoring has stopped, instinctively wakes him up to check his consciousness and make sure he is breathing safely. The officers now know that when a person goes quiet, you don't just cover them with a blanket. You speak to them once more and check their condition. The clues of death hidden within the snoring that we so often dismiss as just a sleeping habit. Finding those clues doesn't require medical expertise. It requires a small amount of care for the person beside you. The love of a wife who watches over her husband's breathing, even if it's a bit noisy, is what creates the 4-minute miracle. Tonight, take a look at the face of your loved one, sleeping beside you. Listen to see if their breathing is labored or if it suddenly stops. Please subscribe and like this video, share your experiences in the comments, and join me, Cheongdam Paul, as we continue to investigate the final clues of survival. This has been Cheongdam Paul Survival File.